the earliest albums that I have. This is the one. There are some early albums with Shorty, with Jimmy Jufrey and Shorty Rogers and Bob Cooper, and then there are the sides with Bob. What is he called? Buster Brown.
Boots Brown.
Boots Brown. Okay.
Yeah.
Buster Brown's somebody else. You
Yeah.
remember him too.
Yeah. Well, this is a compilation, as you said, from previous records. Like the first part is from the Sunday Jazz a la Lighthouse album with Carlos Vidal, and the other part is from that's when Shorty went with Victor, and that guy Lewis. The A&R man at Victor dreamed up this idea, Boots Brown. See, so they were just rock and roll records, or what you call, they were a form of rock and roll, you know, and it was fun to play, you know. But the records started to sell, and then the public wanted to see Boots Brown. And Lewis had to own up to the fact that there was no Boots Brown, that it was Shorty and a bunch of white guys masquerading, and that was the end of the project. Luckily, someone managed to save and put it in this CD, which is actually just a CD made up of cuts from other albums.
Right. The next one is.
This is Bob Andrews.
Yes.
I let him come in the club with a Pentron recorder. The microphone was that big. And so I thought, well, it's just an amateur, it won't mean anything. And Bob Andrews, I helped Bob Andrews get in business with a record store. I gave him the name. He said, what'll I call it? What should I call this store? I said, call it Recordville. And it was it was in the same location. I said, he said, where shall I put it? I said, I know an economic surveyor. I'll ask him. And he said, tell him to put it across the street from that market. he was there for 17 years or something. But this record was done on a slow night in the Lighthouse, see? And it was, we just played right straight through. There were no takes or anything. I mean, everything was a take. That was it. It was like playing a set, you know. Only thing is, there weren't 35 people there. And with that little microphone, I thought, well, there isn't going to be much bass, and who knows what's going to be. But it was a chance for these guys to work out, and Pepper needed it. Popo, what's new? You know, like this is definitely just what you might call on a set for programming, and incidentally, for the record, I called all these tunes. I called every tune that was performed when I was on the bandstand in the Lighthouse for 10 years. And nobody ever said that they didn't want to play that tune that I called.
And you know what? It's very interesting to listen to the style of the Lighthouse from those early recordings all the way through to the end. Even though the players change, and you listen to that Bobby Bryant group, there's a certain sound that the All Stars maintained throughout. Do you want to comment about that? How did the All Stars maintain a certain sound?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I often thought that myself, but no one else ever said it, and I was pleased. I'm pleased to hear you say that. I think that's a great observation. But I can't really say why that was, except for certain reasons, like, for instance, Bob Cooper was on a lot of the same records. Certain players would cross, like certain players would tie two albums together, or certain players would tie two other albums together, and that may have been the reason for it. I'm not sure, but I kind of feel that way. And then you got to realize that Stan Levy was, the drummer stayed longer than other guys. That might have had something to do with it, Ken. The drummer stayed longer.
Well, that's true.
Like Stan Levy stayed 5 years, and Shelley was there 2 years, 2.5 years, and Max was there 6 months, you know. So the drum chair was more consistent.
There's something very important about the drummers in modern jazz.
Hey, the band only swings as much as the drummer swings, period, in a small group, you know. Absolutely, I agree with that.
Okay, and it's interesting to look at the tunes on that Pepper album. A lot of them are standards, bop standards, and there's a lot of bassy influence in the Lighthouse All Stars. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, anybody that came out of that period had a great affection for the bassy band, and I, especially me, because I just loved the sound of the rhythm section. And I caught bassy at different times in different halls, and I was always amazed over the fact that Freddie Green played an unamplified guitar, and consequently the band played down to the volume of one rhythm section. It wasn't, when amplification came in, then the rhythm section one rhythm section started sounding like two rhythm sections, and then the band played louder, see? And they didn't, and it was harder to get a blend that way. Whereas with Basie's band, everybody played down to the sound of one rhythm section, and then they got a blend. And the minute they got a blend, then with a blend you can get louder, and it still works, see? So I was always impressed by that band, and so much. And I liked to play his tunes because they had and all the players liked to play his tunes too, because he had a nice feeling, you know, and they were effective in programming simply because they could take the edge off of something or give you a different feeling for changing the mood a bit, you see? That's what you call programming. So what greater way to program than to pull out the Basie tune? Yeah.
Okay. All right, then there's the next one. The Shorty Rogers Skylark album.
Mm-hmm.
That has, I believe that one has Big Boy, parts 1 and 2.
Yeah, this was a bootleg thing all the way. Guy operated out of his garage, and his big thing was the way we got involved was through Vivian Gary, who was one of his artists as a vocalist, and she was with Jimmy Jufrey. So then she said, "Hey, if I'm going to sing with this for this label, well, Jimmy can really do the job, you know." So the All Stars got involved, and the Big Boy was something that Jufrey and Shorty collaborated on without ever writing a note down. There was no written parts on it. It just happened one night late at night on Sunday night when everybody was exhausted, and we had that Coleman Hawkins recording on the jukebox over there. It was called The Big Head, and it was Hawkins was bopping on one sound, bop, 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 a Charleston beat, you know, and it was very effective. coming out of a jukebox. So I flipped off the switch, and we got on the bandstand, and Jeffrey was so tired that he just started bopping, copying, playing the same thing, bop, 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 bop. And then other guys fell in, and the rhythm section started playing, and then all of a sudden, Shorty played that Lionel Hampton break, da 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 da, you know. And then the next thing you know, it became a satire on rhythm and blues. And good satire is fabulous, but it's a tricky subject. You cannot. It has to be. Off the cuff. It cannot be stayed or rehearsed or anything like that. It has to be, a satire in order to be good has to be very fresh and just accidental, or it loses its effervescence. So Big Boy hung on and proved to be something that we had to play, but I refused to play it more than one time a night. And so everybody used to wait. A lot of customers would wait an hour and a half to hear Big Boy sing. And then, of course, we made a travesty of it a bit, like at the break when we got da 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 da. Then when I was playing the bass, at the end of that, I would jump up off the I would make a jump in the air a little bit, you know. And it was just sort of a comic let out, you know, some way to. And funny part about it was the first night it happened, and everybody was so exhausted that it made the band feel real fresh and invigorated again, and the rest of the night we just breezed through it, no problem. But this guy parlayed it, and he did very well with this record because it didn't cost him anything. It was just like one session, 3 hours, you know, minimum, $55 side man, you know, or 65 or whatever it was, very, very minimal. And then Vivian Gary was singing on this. Another one of those lifted and redone gems.
Right. Okay, what about Sunday Jazz a la Lighthouse? There you go.
Yeah, this was the first one, and this was very important because it was done by Contemporary after we had made a deal with them to take over the Lighthouse label. See, that's Swing Shift and Out of Somewhere, those were originally on the Lighthouse label. And overnight, we were in the record business. And I couldn't believe it, you know. I mean, I didn't have any time to. We were swamped with orders and things, you know. We had no office, no mailbox, nothing, you know. All of a sudden, we're in the record business, and so that's when we made the deal to go. The deal was put together by Nesui Erdogan, and he was famous already for the work he had done with the Modern Jazz Quartet, but he was working for Lester Koenig at that time, and so that's how that came about. It was a natural thing for us to do, and this was their first attempt at a remote recording, and it was very primitive. Cecil Charles, the engineer, had a beat-up old recording device, and he was in the attic up above there. The room for Sleepy hadn't even been built yet. And so it must have been very uncomfortable for him. And but it wasn't uncomfortable for us. It was just a joy to do, because we just played our Sunday session and he recorded it, you know. And once again, there were guests, Maynard, you know, and and Carlos Vidal, and Milt was there. So it was a fun thing to do, and it was an eye opener in a way, because at this period there very few records had been made where you could hear the room noise and the atmosphere and the glasses and all that stuff. So it set the stage for us to do the rest of our recording.
Tell me about Lester Koenig. Lester. Yeah, it was Lester Koenig. Yeah.
Well, he was an interesting man, and he meant well. He had been purged during the Red Purge. He was in the motion picture industry and really into it. He and his friends, they had an inside group: Bob Kirsten, Jack Lewerk, Ray Avery. They were all they were a group of friends, and they were all of them very nice guys, and they were all. I think they were from Yale University. They were very well educated men, and Lester King had been doing good, but he had to get out of the business, and so he decided to go in the record business, and he went down there on Melrose, and he took over a traditional building and converted it into a recording studio, and that's where all of his records were made. He drove a Porsche. He was a contemporary guy, you know, for his time, and he had a nice family, a boy and a girl, and his wife I thought was great, and we went to his home. Joyce and I were, you know, we became good friends. He wanted me to become closer to him so that I could go out there and sell his records, you know, but it wasn't going to work out. So we never got into any kind of contention, but he and Levine were the ones that had the words. The thing is, after he got into this industry, because of the new period where and artists were signing and anxious to record and everything. He even recorded Teddy Edwards, a nice album with Teddy, which never made any noise at all and never actually helped Teddy at all. But it was a darn good album, and of course then he did all those great things with Hamp Haas. But then his life changed. Jazz overcame him as a man. Now, you know, that's being pretty presumptuous for a guy like me to say that, but the next thing you know, he got a divorce from his wife, or she divorced him. I don't know what happened, and then he pulled a strange thing. He fell in love with a vocalist, a girl vocal. a girl vocalist. Pow, you know. And she was a mediocre talent, and so then he was. From then on, I felt sorry for the guy, and he recorded, we did 8 albums for him. So we get back to reality. We did 8 albums spaced out over the years. And he left me pretty much alone. He didn't say what I should record, but the occasions came up for albums, and I liked the pacing and everything. The thing is that the thing that I didn't like was he kept updating his studio and buying new equipment, and consequently he charged all that off to the cost of making my albums. So for 10 years I never got any kind of royalty checks that meant anything, see. It wasn't until 15 years later, when the Japanese bought the label, that I started getting royalty checks that amounted to anything. and it didn't bother me at all, because those albums kept me on the bandstand, and they kept the club in business. And that was that. Well, Lester Koenig deserves a place in jazz history, but he could have done better. He got, I think that some people who walk into the beautiful jazz world are sometimes overcome by it, whereas if they had grown up in it and matured a little better as they went along. I mean, that period was so effervescent. Guys starting labels, making records, selling records, and every artist has his own recording contract. And he was a part of that scene, and it was not hard to lose your perspective. Let it lay.
Did he tell you when to record albums, or was that up to you when you were going to make a new album?
Well, it seemed like it was sort of mutual. I would say, we're going to appear here, or we have this in mind, or something. It seemed like he was always ready to record when I got ready to record. That's as far as I can go on that.
Let's talk about the second album then.
Yeah, well, this album had possibilities. It was called Sunday Jazz Volume 2. Yeah. Okay, so this picture on the cover is interesting because it was done by a photographer that was from Florida. He was on the faculty of a university in Florida, and he spent a summer with us. And he took a lot of multiple exposures like this, and he even experimented by putting lights on the musician's fingers and then turning out all the lights and photographing the lights on the hands while the band was playing, you know, and it drew lines on the negative. It was all interesting things. He was a neat guy. I never saw him after that summer, and I don't know what happened to him. He never came back to me. The material would have been great. It just that Cecil, the recording was subpar, and it should never have been released in my book. But I got to name some of the tunes here, like this Jufrey composition, The Big Top. I got to name that one. And also this, The Duke You Say, Sunset Eyes with Teddy Edwards, Gliding Along, that's another Jufrey. There's several Jufrey tunes on here, 4 others. And Coming Through the Rye Bread, that was Jufrey also. So this was just definitely, well, Max is on drums. So this was a new band, you know, and that's when Lorraine Geller and Herb Geller sat in that day. So it was an exciting Sunday with many different. It was Max's first recording with the Stars, and that's what made it kind of difficult, because a lot of people had never experienced playing with Max, and he was playing right out on the front of the beat. And that was a little unusual to some of those people, and especially after playing with Shelley, who always played right in the center of the time. So it was a hurried album that should have been made 6 months later.
Why don't you grab those 2 albums over there? Yeah, those 2, and that kind of follows up on those.
Okay, good. Yeah, these were done that same day. And, oh, yeah. Yeah, well, it's a spin-off of this. somehow. But, I mean, this was a different day, yeah. And Chet was there, and Miles was there, and Rolf Erickson. Now, that alone is unique in itself, because Miles hadn't been playing. This was his first record date in about, I don't think, he hadn't played for a year. He'd been in St. Louis, you know, over this folks' place. And he was just getting back on the scene, and Chet was playing material he had never played before, and that day, you know. And Rolf Erickson, he had fallen short of what Milt Bernhardt thought he would do. Milt's the one that brought Erickson to take Shorty's place, but he never filled Shorty's shoes and never came close to it. He was a neat guy, and we remained friends till he died, but he was not ever accepted as a great talent among the West Coast guys of that period. So this was another album that should have been recorded after more preparation. It was the first big Sunday that Max came in, so you had a curious mixture of approaches to the modern scene at that time, and I was really disappointed, because it was done as we played through the Sunday on a regular. We were trying to do business too, you know, as sets and all new music and it was asking too much of the young talent involved.
What was the recording setup there?
I think it was a Cecil with some newer equipment.
I see. Yeah, it sounds better.
Yeah. And it could have been done so much better if they had just let us play for 1 week. You know, they were asking an awful lot. They didn't know what they were asking for, and then yet everybody tried and gave it their best shot.
How about that Art Pepper? No, the one, no, there you go.
Bob Andrews presents Art Pepper.
So tell me a little bit about Art Pepper and the Lighthouse All Stars.
Well, you know, I tried to help. He actually worked there 3 different times as a member of the All Stars. This was the first time. And he was in pretty good shape. And, you know, God forgive me for saying things like that about musicians, but I'm not being facetious. I'm just saying it's a well-known fact that he had a hard life, and it was, at that time he was younger, and he was capable of really playing great. And I loved the way he played. Boy, when he was playing, sometimes he would be playing, it was so good you couldn't even believe it, you know. And but he was undisciplined on the bandstand. It used to worry me. At this time, with Giuffre and Milt Bernhardt, oh, this was the best. This was a really great group to work with, and so you could call any tune, and it would just happen. So this actually is the best representative album so far that we've seen for the sound of a basic Lighthouse All Star, or the original group. Congratulations. I'm sure glad you have that. This was the first album that Rolf Erickson made with us, and it was Stan Lee on drums. Well, this is a composite of one group that was leaving and a new group that was coming in. And certain things, certain tunes in this album had their moments. It says here, supervision by Lester Koenig or Robert Kirsten and Nestle Erdogan. So that was the inner circle. And all three guys, really nice men. I don't know about, the tune I like the best in here is Mexican Passport.
Talk about that tune.
Well, that's Bud Shank and Bob Cooper put it together. And it swings, it has a doubling, both guys are doubling at different times. And it just keeps moving, and it's structurally speaking, it's more than a 12-bar phrase. Yeah. I named this tune too, Snap the Whip. I'll be darned. Well, you know, these guys were just dropping these tunes out, and they weren't adept at putting names on them, you know. So they didn't mind. They didn't. Nobody ever said, "Hey, I don't like that name." That's my contribution.
Is that the album that Mambo Los Feliz is on? I don't remember.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and Witch Doctor?
Yeah.
2 or?
Let's see, Witch Doctor number 2. Number 1.
Number 1.
Yeah.
Those are very famous.
Well, yeah, that both. See, Mambo Las Feliz was Holman, I think, and Witch Doctor number 1 was Bob Cooper. But at that time, they were the music that type of music was in a transition period, and it came out of the Kenton Band, and originally they were called Mambos, and but they weren't Mambos. They were jazz Mambos, played with a jazz feeling, and consequently I did not play the right bass part for it. I just played a basic 1 and 3, which was not really what I should have been playing, but nobody suggested I play something different. I thought maybe Shorty would tell me, or maybe Coop would tell me, but they never told me. They just played, they accepted it, and I let it go because I always thought of it as an interlude. I always thought of all those Latin tunes as an interlude to the other programming. And but they were very adept at playing the Latin instruments. All of those guys could play those instruments, and they could do it really well. So that made it a feasible, wonderful project, and it was well received by the public.
Now there's the Flute and Oboe album.
Yes. As we have spoken, and this came out of the band room upstairs. Shank and Coop, everybody that worked there was preparing themselves to go into the studios. And they knew that these reed players knew they were going to have to double. There was a time when I first went to L.A., during the time when the Benny Goodman guys went into the studios, they didn't double. Like Les Robinson, first alto player, he was under contract to Warner Brothers and never doubled. He just played alto. When these guys got there, everybody was doubling. Maybe 3 doubles. I mean, maybe 2 doubles, playing the horn and 2 other doubles. You know, now it's common practice. You see a tenor player with a flute, a soprano sax, and an oboe or a double reed instrument of some kind, you know. So they were on the right track, and they were up in the band room practicing and rehearsing, and I walked in there cold turkey, and I heard these beautiful sounds, and it just knocked me out. Because I heard so many different kinds of sounds. But this was a departure, and I thought right away it should be downstairs, and I suggested let's go downstairs and try it on the bandstand, and right away it proved to be a great change of pace, and something that these guys became pretty proficient at. Shank carried that over into the LA4, and Coop took his into the studio. I got to name all of these tunes: Aquarium, Warm Winds, Albatross, Hermosa Summer, and Happy Town. So how do you account for that? Why would I be naming the tunes? It's all about the beach. It's all about... That's how that came about.
You know, there's something very interesting too about that album. Most of it is the great bop drummer Max Roach is playing on this album,
Yeah.
which, you know, is such a different kind of music for him. You want to comment about that?
Yes, indeed. Well, they had Sonny Clark and Max, and those guys can swing. So Max played mallets almost all the way through on that, and he did a marvelous job. And he didn't. He came down to that level. He never violated those guys, but his mallet work was just exemplary. And Sonny Clark played all the right things. What a marvelous musician he was. It was a fun thing to do. In fact, I've given this album to more people. I mean, like, I've made friends over the years. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I was a musician. I like jazz, you know, I played jazz. Oh, have you got an example of your work? This is what I would give them. And it worked. Wow, what an idea. Good thing, you know. Ease them into it.
I want to grab that second whole stack there.
Yeah.
And, right, and good. So we'll start with that.
In the Solo Spotlight was dictated by this picture. This picture was taken at the Palos Verdes Light, right down there by me. But there were two pictures taken that day. This one and the one on the album where I'm sitting on the fire plug. That's the light right there in back. Well, you can't walk in there and take a picture of this, but the guy that took this picture conned him into letting him go in there by saying he was a student in high school. So that picture fit perfectly with this picture fits with in the Solo Spotlight, the big light. So it dictated, and the idea was okay. The idea was sound, but the added men and the added music, it was not an album that represented the Lighthouse All Stars per se. So it was not a good seller. It did not sell like the others, which automatically told me, don't ever do that again. Make the records of the group that you're presenting in the public, and that's the ones that will sell. Now, there's nothing wrong with this album musically. I love it. It's one of my favorites, you know, but it's a little too concertized, and it's a departure, so it didn't really make any noise. Now this
Howard is Concerto for Doghouse? The Howard on that one?
Yeah, this is me. A Concerto for Doghouse, that was a mistake. I had a tendency to refer to previous periods as the years went by. And other albums have music that fall into that category too. We'll get to that, but this, of course, was something I was featured with the Kenton Band.
Right.
And it was played at the wrong tempo, and I hadn't been playing it enough, and I wish I had never recorded it. But the Stan Kenton version did turn out to get good reviews in Europe, and was even and they even said it was the only track in the album that really swung. But I did not make it in this one. I should have played a cadenza on the end. There were many things I should have done that I just kind of sloughed it off, and I was not impressed with it later. And this is a new band now. This is volume 5. 6, yeah. And this was Claxton's famous photo taken from the sand. The other one was taken from the pier. But then he came down below and he took this one. And this was the start of a whole new period for the All Stars, with Conte and Schenck and Coop, Claude and Stan Levy. This was a fun album to do, and everything went down real easy. Stu Williamson was in on a couple of tunes, and it seems like Bud came back to do some of the tracks. Very interesting how these, in retrospect. But then you take Who's Sleepy? That was a composition made for Sleepy Stein, and famous DJ, owner of The Knob. Isn't It Romantic? Just another tune. Mad at the World was a Bob Cooper composition used in a movie. East of the Sun, standard. Long Ago and Far Away, another standard. A long meter tune. That's those were fun tunes. Just a little more, a little something different to play. And Dickie's Dream, that was always a drum solo for Stan, which was keeping the band on the stand and doing business. This was a band that had a good following. This Lighthouse at Laguna album was this was all put together by Lester Koenig. There was a record dealer a guy had a record store in Laguna Beach, and he got together with Lester Koenig and said, "Why don't you put the Lighthouse All Stars in the Laguna Bowl and record them, and I'll present them." The record store guy, "I'll present them there, do me a favor." Oh well, I don't want to sound facetious, but that's the mechanics of the thing, and it turned out to be a great date. And Shelley, of course, he by that time Lester had Barney Kessel, and he had Hampton Hodge Trio, and he had Shelley Mannon, his men. So it was a showcase for his label, and it worked out fine. We played to a sold-out house. But then the next year they wanted to repeat it, see? And so they got real ingenious then. Lester Koenig and this record dealer decided that they would put the Firehouse 5 in there on Saturday night, and they would have the All-Stars play on Saturday afternoon, and they would fill it up twice. Well, they sure got a shock. They found out right away that Saturday afternoon is the worst time to present a jazz concert ever, because we went down there and played. I should have been tipped, because I went down there to make some publicity pictures for the second year, and I met with all these so-called city officials, not connected with the city, but like the Optimists and the Lions Club and all those guys. They wanted to get in the picture, see, and that was okay with me. But they acted like I wasn't even there, see. So I thought, well, that's different. Anyway, I didn't say anything, but they put us on Saturday afternoon, and we played to 100 people, you know, and so they took advantage of me. But this album did more than that. I started getting complaints from the Chamber of Commerce in Laguna. We're getting calls from people who want to know where the lighthouse is. Well, anyway, the Hamp House Trio sounded great in there. I mean, Shelley sounded marvelous. And Kessel played one tune round about midnight. Okay, so here we go with, this is a nice album. I like this album, probably one of the best of all. Lighthouse All Stars, music for lighthouse keeping. Now you know where that title came from. Can't get away from it. It was just the bottom line, period, all the way. Bob Cooper, Frank Rosalino, Conte Condoli, Sonny Clark, and Stan Levy. Now there, if you want to have some fun, hire that band and then play with them. Oh man. Love Me or Levy, that was for Stan. Taxi War Dance. See, now Taxi War Dance was a throwback to Basie. Octavia was a Cooper original. And I think that was an oboe solo. Mambo Las Vegas, that was Bill Holman. Jubilation was another Cooper original, which had a fine chordal structure. Ideal, that was that's the tune. I'm sure glad to find out where that was. Ideal. That doesn't seem like the real name. Well, maybe it is. Yeah, okay, that's a different tune. Latin for Lovers, that was Coop and Topsy. Yeah, this was done after this session that night. No, this wasn't the night, but this was just done because of Sonny Clark and Conte, and it was a good idea. And now this one, Conte and Lee Morgan, this was done at Liberty Records, and this was part of that Double or Nothing album. In fact, that's what it is. This was done by Fresh Sounds. I sold this guy the rights to do this. This album, Double or Nothing, was my opportunity to put the East Coast and West Coast together. It was Dizzy's band was appearing in Hollywood. And the drummer, I liked the drummer, Charlie Persip. And so I made the deal with him because I wanted to get him and Stan Levy together. And then that brought in Lee Morgan and Benny Golson. And Red Mitchell begged me to let him play on the date, which wasn't a hard decision for me to make. And we switched to horn players and rhythm sections. It was a marvelous idea. It was just done. They put up the charts, the Benny Golson stuff, you know, they just put up the charts. Maybe run it down or talk it over, but there was no time spent on it. It just, the guys were too good. They played it right down, you know, everybody. And it was fun. But Fresh Sounds, Liberty let it drop dead, just like everything else they did. So Jordi Puggio came to the mainland, and Dave Pell sicked him onto me. So he came out to Hemet and he stayed in our home there for a couple of days. And I sold him a bunch of junk out of my garage. Stuff that was just disintegrating, you know, falling apart. And I was happy to get rid of it. I knew that he was an enterprising young guy because he'd been over at UCLA digging in the archives. And he had a briefcase. And I didn't find out till 20 years later that he was the son of a very prominent politician in Spain. And he has a lot of bread, you know. And he had he had this briefcase, and he had a lot of cash in there. So he just paid me the money for he just paid me cash for everything, you know. And I should have asked him for twice as much. I don't but I like him, and to this day we're friends. The thing is, he has expanded, and his mind. He was a young man whose mind was captivated and stuck in the 50s. It was just as if that was it. He'd never thought of anything else but the 50s, that's it. And he's got them all now, from all the different labels. And I hope that he's making some money with it, because it's a magnificent adventure. I like the guy. Jazz Rolls Royce is next. Oh, this was a beautiful idea. I was approached by a UCLA student. At one time, UCLA, at the same time that this John Brown, and this is John Brown right here in this picture. He came to me with the idea. Another student from UCLA came to me with an architectural major, and he had a plan for a building to be in the Hollywood Hills, a combination concert hall, rehearsal setup, and like a college for jazz musicians. It was marvelous. And it didn't come to fruition, and nothing was ever heard about it, but I think that's where a famous art gallery is now on that same location. Anyway, in this situation, Jazz Rolls Royce, Coop wrote all the music, and it was only performed once and recorded twice, because the engineer blew the Royce Hall, and it was the greatest, very exciting, good sound, good rapport, marvelous audience and everything. And it killed me, because we had to go in an ice cold studio and try to recreate the whole thing again, you know. Never quite made it. It wasn't nearly as good. But the interesting fact about it was I had to go to see the Dean of Min to get permission to do this. Now, this is a fact. Let's see, this was done in 57. This was the first recorded jazz concert at Royce Hall ever. It's not the first concert, because earlier Duke had played there for homecoming. But this was the first one. The music was for the homecoming event. And so that dictated some of the tunes. Prelude to the Queen, she came out on the stage, you know. Coop Salutes the Co-op. Bruinville, My Bruinville. Mambo del Cuado. Some of those tunes I named, but it was all about that. See, and in this album, they do have 2 tracks from the original Royce Hall, and you can compare the sounds and the difference right there. But if you don't mind, I would like to go a little further with this. It's listed in the UCLA documents as one of the concerts presented in Royce Hall, the same hall where Stravinsky conducted his 50th anniversary concert. So, and I made sure that so that Cooper would get the credit for it, the music. See, now, it was my idea to make this aborted mathematical equation here, because it was just another way of putting the story in a collegiate manner, or in an academic manner, say, so to speak. Kind of laid an egg, but at the same time, I have to take credit for it. And the roles was important. I didn't want this to seem like a significant. I didn't want to think it was rock and roll. So I searched to get a Rolls Royce, and I called several different places, and they just blew me right off. But I wasn't asking for the owner, see. So this Rolls dealer was right on Westwood Boulevard, no, or Wilshire Boulevard, and I asked to speak to the owner. And so he came on the phone, and I said, I'm doing an album over at UCLA called Jazz Rolls Royce, and I need a Rolls Royce car for the cover shot. And his words to me were, where do you need it and what time? And it cost me $10. I tipped the driver $10, and then he took me and Coop on a ride in the Rolls. And that's just, but now there's a chance that that music will be performed again, and at UCLA. And if so, I know that it will be done correctly. And of course, there's no plans for it at this time, but since Poston is now doing a jazz history class over there, he may be able to put it together. And this beautiful thing, Jazz Structures, that was another Cooper composition. And you know, a funny thing, he wrote quite a lot in those days. This was academic stuff. This even led to further work for him, because this was done for Lester Novros, who was in charge of the video department at USC.
Got about a minute to go on this tape.
Okay, fine. I'll make it out. So this is about the construction of the Union Oil building downtown LA on the Harbor Freeway, and he did a marvelous job because he used the tempos of the workmen to dictate the tempo of the tunes and the little sequences. I was very proud of this album, and very few people ever heard it. So we'll let it go at that.
Good. I think that's terrific. That's just what I had in mind, Howard, for you to